There's a language you hear over and over again in basketball, especially from coaches who know they messed up but refuse to admit it. It's not honest, it's not direct, it's polished, filtered, and filled with empty phrases. A mix of PR spin, safe buzzwords, and carefully crafted excuses that do one thing really well: talk around the truth. And honestly, it's insulting to anyone actually watching the game, because when a coaching staff makes a massive, obvious mistake on the biggest stage, you're never gonna hear them own it. You won't see them step up and say their system failed or that their approach got exposed. That doesn't happen. Instead, they try to flip the narrative. They drown you in vague talk about rotations, team chemistry, and small sample sizes, hoping that somewhere in all that noise, the real issue gets buried. It's deflection, plain and simple. And if you want a perfect example of this in action, look no further than the post-game press conference after Team USA's 84-70 win over Spain in the FIBA World Cup qualifying final. The headline says everything you need to know. Interim head coach Nate Tibbetts stepped up to the mic and attempted to explain why Caitlin Clark, the most dangerous offensive player on the floor, was taken out of the starting lineup. What followed wasn't just questionable, it was borderline embarrassing. So today we're breaking it all down. No sugarcoating, no coach speak. We're going to strip those answers down to what they really mean, take a hard look at what Spain was actually doing defensively, and expose why Team USA might be stuck in its own internal politics right now. But first, let's rewind to how we even got here. Just 2 days before that final, the coaching staff finally did what fans had been calling for. They put Caitlin Clark in the starting lineup against New Zealand, and the result? Total domination. A 55-point blowout, an offense that looked unstoppable. Clark was perfect inside the arc, completely controlled the tempo, and finished with a ridiculous plus 24 plus minus. Everything clicked. The formula worked. It was clear. The best version of Team USA had finally been unlocked. And then, the final happened. Against a disciplined, high-level Spanish team, the coaching staff got nervous. They went away from what worked. They leaned back on the old approach, and just like that, Caitlin Clark was back on the bench. From the moment the game started, you could see the impact of that decision immediately.
Game in I think 7 days, just like everybody else. They had a disappointing loss last game, and they came out and set the tone. They played a bunch of zone against us. I thought as the game went on, we did a better job with the zone, but give them credit.
I need every basketball fan watching this to really stop and process what the interim head coach just revealed. Spain opened the game in a zone. Now, in international basketball, that's not random, that's intentional. Teams go to a zone for one clear reason. They know they can't keep up with you in man-to-man, so instead they collapse the defense, crowd the paint, and build a wall around the rim. Then they challenge you to beat them from the outside. It's a test of your shooting, your spacing, your discipline. So if you're the head coach and you know that's what you're about to face, the response should be obvious. It's not complicated. It's basic basketball logic. You put your most dangerous perimeter weapon on the floor. You play the shooter who forces defenders to stretch out. The one player who can warp the entire defense just by stepping across half court. The kind of presence that breaks a zone before the ball is even swung. And instead, Caitlin Clark was sitting on the bench. That's not just a mistake, that's a complete tactical failure. Because when you roll out traditional slashers and slower half-court guards against a packed-in European zone, you're doing exactly what the defense wants. You're playing right into their trap. Spain didn't have to adjust, they didn't have to scramble. They were comfortable from the opening tip. No pressure on the perimeter, no fear of deep-range shooting. So they stayed home in the paint, cut off driving lanes, jumped passing angles, and turned Team USA's offense into something slow, predictable, and completely out of rhythm. And when Tibbetts says Spain set the tone, let's be honest about why that happened. They set the tone because Team USA left its tone setter on the bench. It's like walking into a storm without your best protection. Not because you forgot it, but because you chose not to bring it. That's not strategy, that's stubbornness. But the most uncomfortable moment of that press conference came later. A reporter practically handed Tibbetts an easy opportunity, a chance to recognize the young stars who had clearly been carrying the tournament. The numbers backed it up. The impact was obvious. All he had to do was acknowledge it, and somehow he didn't. Instead of giving credit where it was clearly earned, he doubled down with an excuse that might go down as one of the worst answers you'll hear from a coach in a moment like that.
I was surprised or disappointed by anyone. I think everyone, they played like who they are, in my opinion. I think part of our challenge as a coaching staff is just looking at different lineups, and I think that's why you saw us change the units as the games went on. And I think as the competition gets better, as you start to move forward, that's why you need those sample sizes and things that you've looked at.
Audi sample size. That's the justification. The head coach really stood there and explained benching the tournament leader in both scoring and assists in a championship game by saying he needed a larger sample size. Let's break that down because it makes zero sense. You gather samples in practice. You experiment in training camp. You test lineups and scrimmages behind closed doors. That's where you figure things out. You don't treat a high-stakes FIBA World Cup qualifying final and against one of the best teams you'll face like it's some kind of trial run. This isn't a lab experiment. This is the moment that decides everything. And here's what makes it even worse. What exactly were they still trying to figure out? They already saw what the veteran-heavy lineup looked like in earlier games. It was slow, predictable, and struggled to generate any real offensive rhythm. Then they saw the alternative, Caitlin Clark running the show as a starter. And the result was a complete blowout, a 55-point destruction where everything clicked: pace, spacing, efficiency, all of it. So the evidence was already there. The results were clear. The answer was right in front of them, which means when a coach hides behind the phrase sample size in a moment like this, that's not analysis, that's fear. What he's really saying is this: we don't want to disrupt the locker room hierarchy. We don't want to upset the veterans. So we're going to keep rotating minutes and keeping everyone comfortable, even if it costs us on the court. That's not strategy, that's politics. It's a carefully worded cover for a lack of decisiveness when it matters most. And if you think that dynamic isn't real, just listen to what veteran guard Kelsey Plum said during that same press conference. She was asked about how players like Caitlin Clark, Paige Buchers, and Angel Reese were being integrated into the team, and her answer? It was subtle, but it said a lot. The kind of response that sounds supportive on the surface, but underneath carries a very different message, one that perfectly reflects the tension between established veterans and rising stars.
Technically, like, they're young, but they played in a lot of big games and big stages before, so they're not afraid of this moment. And, you know, I think Team USA, you know, everyone, I think, did an incredible job of just figuring out how to pick their spots. Obviously, you want to be aggressive and be yourself. Coach talks about that, like, be yourself, but also be yourself within the team dynamic. And, you know, it's all...
Be yourself, but within the team. That's how it's framed. Sounds harmless, right? Then comes the real message. Learn when to pick your spots. Now translate that into what it actually means inside a locker room. Pick your spots is veteran code. It's what gets said when established players want a rising star to take a step back. It's a polite way of saying, we know what you can do, just don't do it too much. It means, yes, you can shoot from 30 feet. Yes, you can throw full court lasers in transition, but slow it down. Give the ball up, stand off to the side, wait until it's your turn. That's the expectation. And here's the problem. You don't say that to someone like Caitlin Clark. You don't tell a player with that level of vision, creativity, and offensive control to limit herself. You don't ask someone who warps entire defenses just by existing on the court to fit in. You don't force a talent like that into a system. You build the system around her. Because when you try to squeeze a player like Clark into a slow, methodical, veteran-driven half-court style, you're not maximizing her. You're diminishing her. You're taking away the very thing that makes her special. And that's exactly what this feels like. Team USA isn't treating her like the centerpiece. They're treating her like just another piece. Like someone who should occasionally step up and hit a deep three, instead of the engine that drives everything. But she's not a role player, she's the system. And that disconnect showed up again when Kelsey Plum was asked about the closing moments against Spain, when the veterans took over offensively. Alright, Kalia Copper led the way with 20. Plum added 18. The question was simple. What does it say about the vets stepping up in those key moments? And Plum's answer leaned right into one of the most overused phrases in basketball. The kind that sounds right on the surface, but reveals a lot more when you actually think about it.
Remember, you know, that gold medal game, Ka had a massive impact in winning that game, right? And she's someone that's not afraid of the moment. Same with Chelsea, same with Jack, Dearica. Obviously, like, we've won together, so there's a different level of chemistry. And, you know, when we talk about chemistry, that's, I think, the biggest factor personally playing in these games, because, you know, a lot of these teams get an opportunity to practice with each other, play with each other year round, and we are kind of playing against each other, and then we kind of get put in a situation where it's high stakes, high pressure, and you really have to, like, form that chemistry. So, those moments where you can kind of reflect back to those, like, behind the back passes that Chelsea makes and stuff. People are going to be in those certain times. It's just because we've had
chemistry. That's the word they always fall back on. It sounds right. It feels safe. But in situations like this, it becomes a shield for a system that isn't working. Kelsey Plum's argument is that the veterans closed the game because they've built years of chemistry together. That's the narrative. But let's look at what actually happened on the court. Not the talking points. That so-called chemistry led to a sluggish, disorganized first half where Team USA couldn't separate from Spain. The offense stalled out. Possessions dragged. Nothing came easy. That same chemistry forced Kaylia Copper into playing bailout basketball. Tough, draining isolation plays just to beat the shot clock. That's not dominance. That's survival. So what actually disrupted Spain's defense? It wasn't experience. It wasn't chemistry. It was Caitlin Clark, the 22-year-old coming off the bench. Look at the box score from that 84-70 win. On paper, some people will try to downplay her impact. 22 minutes, only 7 points. And that's exactly where the narrative gets twisted, because they ignore the part that actually matters. 7 assists, team high, complete control of the offense, just 1 turnover. While others were forcing contested shots, Clark was dissecting the defense, reading rotations before they happened, pulling defenders out of position, creating clean, wide open looks over and over again, layups, corner threes, easy buckets. The veterans may have finished the plays, but Clark was the one creating them. She was the system behind the scoring that chemistry couldn't produce on its own. And what you're seeing in that press conference is bigger than just one game. It's a snapshot of a larger shift happening in women's basketball right now. An established order, meeting something completely different. A player who doesn't fit the old mold and forces everything to change. And that's where the tension comes from. The coaching staff hesitates to fully hand her control because doing so would mean admitting their traditional approach no longer works. Veteran players are slow to embrace that pace because it changes roles, touches, and control. So instead, you hear the same phrases repeated. Watch, sample size, fit into the system, pick your moments. But those explanations are starting to lose their weight because the results are right there. The tournament is over, the exhibitions are done, and the next time Caitlin Clark steps on the court, it won't be under Team USA. It'll be in the WNBA with the Indiana Fever, and this time there won't be any limitations disguised as strategy. No more being used as a decoy, no more controlled minutes for the sake of balance. She's going to have the ball, the freedom, the responsibility, a full system built around what she does best. And when that happens, the rest of the league, the veterans, the coaches, everyone is going to have to deal with it. Because when you fully unleash a player with that kind of range, vision, and tempo, you're not just improving an offense. You're breaking defenses. Team USA tried to hold that back, and she still led the entire tournament in assists. So just imagine what it's going to look like when nothing is holding her back anymore. If you've been rocking with this breakdown, make sure you tap in, subscribe, drop a like, and let me know what you think. Was the sample size excuse the worst coaching deflection we've seen all year? And when the Olympics come around, will Team USA finally hand Caitlin Clark the keys? We'll break it all down next time.